Hey, everybody, justkiradavis here. Welcome back to another episode of Just Kira Davis. I'm your host, Kira Davis, and you can find me on X at Kira Davis, Kira, and Instagram at Just Kira Davis, JUST Kira Davis. Go buy my book, Drawing Lines, Why Conservatives Must Begin to Battle Fiercely in the Arena of Ideas. It's never been more relevant. Honestly, go get it. By the way, Bongino endorsed this. Dan Bongino. Right there on the front cover, splash across the front cover. Thank you, Dan. Welcome back, Dan. If you need a fill-in host, you know where to find me. I'm really glad to have Dan back, and I can't wait to hear about whatever it is he can tell us about what he experienced over there on the inside. But it's January 6th. Welcome to the show. Today is a day of infamy. I'm calling it Liberal Tears and Fears Day because it's almost like their Halloween, isn't it? It's like this is the day when they get to dress up, they get to cosplay as the oppressed, as victims. They get to cosplay as, people who barely survived the insurrection. I want to keep in mind that people suffered. I understand that the only victims of January 6th were people who were there to exercise their free speech rights, their First Amendment rights. Ashley Babbitt, and then those who were wrongfully imprisoned for a very long time. And those are the only victims. So I don't want to make light of that. And I don't want to pretend that those people haven't been through hell and back. So acknowledged. But as far as what the Democrats and liberals want us to believe this day is, they have completely failed. And every January 6th that comes around now, it just becomes more and more obvious. They are utterly perplexed as to why the country has not latched on to this day as like this great unifying moment that proved that the right is made up of insane people. I think one of the most amusing parts of this day for me are all of the articles that come out from the left. It just sort of like all the regrets, all the complaints, everything. And so I've got an article to share with you today. It's from the Bulwark. Last week, or not last week, I don't even remember when I did the last episode. I've kind of been piecemealing it through the holidays because I got other things going on. And the great thing about working for yourself is you can just work when you want to. And if there's anyone out there who wants to give me a job, I'll work when you want me to. But if I'm working for myself, I'm going to work when I want to. So I can't remember when that last one was. I guess right before New Year's. But I haven't been here since then, and a lot has happened since then. And if I'm going to be totally honest with you, I can't remember where I was going with that thought. So I'm just going to keep talking as though I was completely prepared, and I'm not 51 years old and in the midst of menopausal brain. It's really hard to do this job while experiencing this phase of life. I can remember Tammy Bruce saying that to me once. It really is, because you need all your faculties up here to be firing at a mile a minute, and man, oh man, it gets hard. All right, well, let's move forward. So what I like about January 6th is that I like that everyone writes all these articles and they're so sad, and I know where it was going. I'm back. I got it. I know where it was going. On that episode, I read the New York Times article to you, the Marjorie Taylor Greene article, and it's juicy. You should go back and don't read it. Just listen to my commentary. And people liked it. I actually got quite a few, maybe a dozen or more responses from people who just said, I like you reading the article and sort of analyzing along the way. I'm going to do more of that because I actually like doing that too. I love sort of digging in between the lines. So it's January 6th. I found a great article from the Bulwark. They're very upset over there today. They're very sad. It's a very sad day over the Bulwark. So I thought, let's have some fun. It's a holiday, really. Let's celebrate. Let's do some January 6th activities. But what is most vexing to the liberals is that this day did not become the symbol that they wanted and needed it to be. Now, I think it was on its way to being that. I mean, I think that's what they tried to set up. The rest is history. But I want to tie this back to the Jimmy Kimmel thing. If you'll just bear with me for just 2 minutes or longer. I'm a bit long-winded. But so when the Jimmy Kimmel kerfuffle came about following Charlie's assassination, and it's still going on. I mean, Kimmel's still out there on his I Survived tour, and they basically made him a martyr. They did they protested, all the left, the Hollywood leftists. They did all of the things. They had events. And then when he came back, it was like this big hallelujah moment. And I said at that time, this is the liberal left trying to replicate the mood and the camaraderie, or I don't know how to put this, the mood and the motivation of the right after Charlie died. They saw how powerful that was, and it was powerful. It's only a few months ago, which is really hard to. I'm struggling with moving into 2026 without Charlie on the scene. I'm actually struggling with that. But it was only a few months ago. And they we remember the powerful atmosphere at the memorial in the days following his assassination, right? It really did seem like there was a move of God. I don't think that's gone, by the way. I know we may have moved on to other things, but that's not gone. I mean, when the Holy Spirit moves in, the Holy Spirit always does permanent change, always. So there's no, well, if something happened, no, something happened that day. The left felt it and they tried to replicate it. And because the left can only imitate, they can't create. And also because they're a bunch of cowards, they couldn't make a Charlie Kirk, right? None of them's going to put their lives in actual danger. No one's going to do that. They're not really going to give anything up. They can only imitate. So Kimmel was the cheapest imitation of a Charlie Kirk moment for them. It's vile to say even, but that's how they are. That's how they think. That's what January 6th for them is too. It's supposed to be this symbolic moment to replicate these unifying moments that have happened on the right, that have created a sense of desperation and determination and a sense of, and have really engendered a warrior nature among righties. They wanted that. That's what they wanted January 6th to be, besides all of the other things that it was going to justify for them, right? Throwing Trump in jail, jailing more Americans. I believe you and me were on that list. I think I was on a list for sure. So that's what they wanted, because they can't create. They can only imitate. So January 6th is a poor imitation of a political movement, just like George Floyd was a poor imitation of a political movement, and just like Jimmy Kimmel was a poor imitation. So everybody's just, had enough of it. And we don't care. And that's the thing that bothers the left. We don't care. We might care if we hadn't won in 24. I keep wanting to say last year now. If we hadn't have won in 24, maybe we would care more. We'd still be fighting these battles. We'd still be angry. But we definitely don't care. When I was working for Red State, I think it was the first or second, I think it might have been the second anniversary of January 6th. I wrote an article and I said, look, I don't feel like we need to cover this on the right. In fact, I don't think we should cover the anniversary. The left ignores stories, right? They ignore. At that time, we were still reeling from all of the Hunter Biden cover-ups, and the left at that time had been ignoring some really big stories, and they blow up the stories that they want people to focus on. And so I said, I don't think we need to participate in this. If there's new information for people, of course, we're in the business of information, but otherwise, I don't think we should make this a day that we should be covering top to bottom. And my bosses at Town Hall Media actually agreed. So they obviously, you can write what you want there. It's not, they're not the Gestapo. I loved it. I'm not there anymore for personal reasons, not because I didn't like the job. But they said, you can write, obviously, if you're moved to write about this, you write about this, but we're not going to focus on heavy coverage today because we don't have to. And I think a lot of other outlets picked up that sort of attitude towards it that year. And it's sort of been declining ever since. And as we're finding out, the right's actually the majority in this country. And so the majority of people don't really care about January 6th. I'd venture to say the majority of people really didn't in the first place, but it just got a lot of media hype. And then all of the censorship, the Biden administration, the dark ages, as I like to call them, that came along and it just made everything much, much worse. So today we're going to check in on the fellas over at the Bulwark and see how they're doing. They were never really happy with Trump in the first place. They're still not happy with Trump. They're not pleased with the Maduro raids. Nothing Trump does is going to win these people. We need to know that before we move forward in 2026. You need to know that. Because if you were like me prior to maybe 2024, you thought there was still room for persuasion, for logic and reason, and that when you lead with grace, that you can see real change. And again, I say all the time, there still may be room for that, but this version of Kira is not interested in pursuing it. And I think a lot of people are like that. And so 2026, as we go into 2026, we have to understand this. The left cannot be persuaded. Whoever's ripe enough to come over to the truth. You don't need to be a right winger. I'm not trying to make everybody a right winger. We don't need everyone to be a right winger. That's dangerous too. But, whoever's going to get it, they'll get it. They'll get it. The information's out there. Everything's out there. Everything's on the internet. There's no lack of information. If they want it, they'll find it. I don't think there's any more people left to win over there, So as we move into 2026, I don't think we should be about the business of persuasion. I think we should be about the business of crushing our enemies. And then when that's done, then we can get back to the business of persuasion, because that's for a civilized society. Persuasion is for a civilized society. And we do not live in a civilized America right now. If you live in Los Angeles, if you live in New York, if you live in New Orleans, right? This is true. But a lot of you who live in the smaller towns and the places nobody's talking about, that in the deepest and most real of ways. And nobody cares because you're not Los Angeles and you're not New York and nobody listens. That this country is falling apart, and what we call civilized behavior has been thrown to the wayside. So persuasion is for a civilized society. Persuasion is for the civil. The left are not civil. They're killing people. They're not civil. So moving into 2026, that's how I believe my mission for 2026 is to bang the drums of war. I don't think enough people understand that we are at war. We're not heading towards war. I was saying that last year. We're heading towards war. No, we're in the war. Actually, the offensives have already been launched against us. These people are sitting in the halls of our government. They're running our programs. They're buying up property next to our military bases. They've invaded our country by the millions over the last 4 years. By the millions. No, my friends, war is not coming. War is here. And it's easy to say, well, she's being hyperbolic or she's being dramatic. I am both of those things. Okay, I don't apologize. I am both of those things. It doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't true. We are at war. You just have the luxury of thinking about it or rolling it around in your mind because you're not seeing tanks and people with guns, walking down the street or barging into your house yet. That's your idea of war. That's how they've been winning for so long, because they've been waging a war we didn't even know was being fought, because no one can beat us militarily. If we showed the world anything on Saturday, it was that we're still the lone superpower on this planet, and we can still kick your ass if we choose to. Our military has been weakened. Our defensive capabilities have been weakened by Democrats over the years. Our foreign policy has been weak. But even at our weakest, we're still one of the strongest players on the planet. And when we choose to go in and knock your ass out, it will happen. So I think the world was reminded of that. And so moving forward into 2026, we're going to have to act like those people. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm having trouble saying. And I think I'm having trouble saying it. I think I'm having trouble saying this stuff because it sounds really mean, and I'm not used to being mean. But this Kira is just sort of done. That's probably middle age. It's probably a big part of it, because I feel like a lot of Gen Xers are right where I'm at. So fair enough, there's that. Again, that doesn't make what I'm feeling not real. We're at war. They've been here for a minute, setting up their bases, setting up their soldiers. God knows what else they've been doing. I think there's something to the trans killer cult that Andy No covers. And I think there's something to the idea of guys like Tyler Robinson. There was another trans kid that was arrested for a New Year's Eve plot, I think, recently. something's going on with them, and it's not just mental health issues, right? It's almost like those people have been groomed. Trained is the word I want to use, but I'm worrying about sounding crazy, but I guess I don't need to worry about that because who cares? I It feels like something's been activated. That's what I'm trying to say. It feels like something's been activated. And I don't think it's an accident that we're seeing all of these people suddenly starting to arm themselves and make plans and go out there, and yeah, a lot of them are trans because there's something going on there. Probably need to take a closer look at these drugs we're feeding these kids. But these are their soldiers. That's why we joke, y'all joke, right? The blue hair weirdos with the septum ring. We joke. It's not a look, it's a uniform. You hear me? It's not a look. It's not fashion. It's a uniform. The war is here. It's 2026. Get ready. All right. So let's see what the bulwark. Let's see what's. Let me put on my sad face because the bulwark's really sad. They're very sad over there. It's January 6th. Get serious. Let's go over to the bulwark to see how they're handling January 26th. How it's going over there. All right. Let's read this. This is from. It's from their morning shots. So it's a collection of these guys. Andrew Egger, Jim Swift, and of course, Bill Kristol. Poor Bill. Y'all, when I say Trump broke people, he really broke people. He really did. He really did. But Bill Kristol, I always find is the best example of the intelligentsia, the conservative intelligentsia. So when I was coming up, when I first became a conservative about 25 years ago now, I was reading everybody. I couldn't get enough. Bill Kristol was one of those people. He was a wonderful mind. I always imagined I would love to work with him one day or work for him one day. I just thought he had such a command of language and of conservatism and fiscal responsibility. And then came Trump, and he didn't just melt, he disintegrated. Like, actually disintegrate. Like, his personality just completely disintegrated. And we spent a while going back and forth, a couple of years, over Trump versus never Trump, and why were people like this, and what happened to Bill Kristol. And you could say that about a lot of people, but I think here's what happened to Bill and to others. What Bill did, the job he did, maybe he started out differently, but by the time he got to the Trump era, he was doing the job he did because he liked being an intellectual icon. You know, he liked that people turned to him for their opinions, for information, and he liked that he was sort of a tastemaker for the movement, politically wise. And what happened with Trump is a lot of these people realized that they weren't that influential. They were just interesting. They thought that they were telling us how to think. But what they found out in 2016 is they can't tell us how to think. We'll think what we want. We just like reading your stuff. And that's what made them mad. That's what it is. It's not so much Trump. It's you. You made Bill Kristol wrong. And he doesn't like that because you're supposed to get your direction from him, not the other way around. So a lot of these people are really upset because they were wrong. And you didn't stay in line. You did not remain where you were, which is you're the unwashed masses, and people like that are the ones who understand things, and they're the ones who are supposed to tell you how to understand things. All right, let's read the bulwark. January 6th and the never-ending coup. I love it already. I love it already. Title, 5 stars. It's now been nearly 3 weeks since the Justice Department was required by law to publish all the Epstein files in its possession. And look, they're getting around to doing it, okay? It's just taking a bit longer. Oh, okay, happy Tuesday. All right, here we go. Andrew Egger wrote this one, by the way, not Bill Kristol. Andrew Egger wrote this. 5 years, half a decade ago today, Donald Trump summoned his angriest, most loyal fans from, I'd be right from the top. He summoned his angriest, most loyal fans. No, people were pissed and they showed up at the Capitol. That's what happened. I don't think he didn't. People were pissed. People were already planning on going to the Capitol with a call to arms and a fervent plea. They're trying to steal the country from us and they'll get away with it unless we stop them. They assembled on the National Mall, their frustration and rage crackling in the air, waiting to be told what to do. All those people were just waiting. They were just waiting to be told what to do. They're just standing around going, geez, we are robots. When will Trump tell us what to do? This is an excellent article so far. Trump whipped them into a frenzy, sending them marching down to the Capitol and then waited. Reads like a fiction story. All right. Last week, an excellent New York Times editorial described the insurrection. I love that they're still calling it an insurrection. You know what? That word is becoming like when you hear somebody say, I'm Trump, like I have trauma, or I am like if you read an application, it says, I'm BIPOC, Black Indigenous person of color. It's a red flag is what I'm saying. It's a flashing neon sign. Hi, I'm an idiot liberal. The only people who use the word insurrection when talking about January 6th are idiot liberals. So it's almost like it means nothing now. The editorial described January 6th as the riot that never ended, a turning point, but not the one it first seemed to be. Okay, let's stop here for a second. This is why I picked this article for y'all, because I think there's something here, and I didn't read the whole thing. I skimmed it so I can be surprised when I read with you. But I think this is a really honest description of what's going on. And it gives me hope, because what I see is that the left sees, right? The left can see, I'm just fixing my monitor here. The left can see that January 6th actually didn't have the effect that they wanted it to have. And they can see that there is a movement in this country and something's happening and they're losing. They can see that. So it's not just us, they're noticing it too. And I think that's encouraging. Because what part of the problem with this news cycle, this current era that we're in, is everything's siloed and you're not sure what's reaching the other side. And sometimes they just don't notice that it's happening at all. Just like with us in January 6th, we're just, oh, it's January 6th again. You know, they don't notice that these things are happening sometimes. So it's good to hear them say, no, we see this change. It's rapid and it's noticeable. To some, it felt like an ending, the final violent death spasms of the cult of Trump. This is January 6th, I guess. So much so that the Senate Republicans, who could have slammed the door on him forever, deluded themselves into thinking he would stay gone without having to lift a finger. Yes, that's actually a great sentence. That's actually exactly what happened. All the squishy Republicans, they sure did. A lot of folks abandoned Trump after 2020 because they were hoping that was it, and he went away and he was just an anomaly. And from our last episode, who was one of those people that stood in the gap? Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she deserves credit for that, even though she's off the reservation. And if you want to know my analysis of that, go back and listen to the episode. I mean, she's gone now. It's okay. Bye-bye. Thanks for your service, girl. But it's important to remember that during that time, she really was one of the few Republicans standing next to Trump, and doing so with fervor and commitment. Instead, it proved to be the dawn of Trump's total liberation. He had stress test his own theory of his base, that they would swallow insane, ludicrous election lies simply because he asked them to, would march themselves into felonies because they thought he wanted them to, and would then sit in their jail cells, not disillusioned, but unshaken in their faith in him, patiently awaiting the day of his return and their reward. Eventually, they got it. Andrew, I see what you're doing here. Obviously, you are using biblical language to connect Trump to some godlike worship that people have. But again, this is a complete misunderstanding that the left has for the right. They don't know who we are. There's a lot of reasons for that. Mostly they don't want to, but they have no way. In the past, they haven't had a way to get to know who we are because we've all been so siloed. So this is who they think we are. Ludicrous election lies and saying, again, they're just saying that like it's fact. They just repeat. That's what you need to do. When you talk about 2020, you need to talk about it like it's normal to talk about it in terms of being stolen, because they just sort of put it out there like it's meaningless to say that. But of course it does mean something. It's an editorial. You're editorializing January 6th. You have no proof. all these people were swallowing and saying ludicrous lies, or they were waiting for orders. You don't have no proof of that. Ever since, Trump has lived his life in accordance with the lessons he learned that day. Yeah, I think that's true. There was no act of selfishness or vindictiveness too grotesque for him to survive, provided he kept his people adequately juiced in the belief that their enemies were worse, and provided he could claw his way back to actual hard power. Again, this is so... When you hear Andrew write about Trump, I want you to put you in there. Put your name in there. Brenda. Ever since Brenda has lived her life in accordance with the lessons that she learned that day, there was no act of selfishness or vindictiveness too grotesque for her to survive, provided she kept her people adequately juiced in the belief that their enemies were worth, and provided she could claw her way back to actual hard power. Andrew's talking about you. Again, going back to how I started this, it is not about Trump. It is about Trump, but everyone, do we think that the day Trump says goodbye to the White House that this stops? That they don't have another villain? It's not about Trump. He was always right. It's not me they're trying to kill, it's you. It's not me they want, it's you. Andrew hates you. It's true. We've never left the January 6th era. But what's most staggering is how many people would prefer to pretend we never entered it in the first place. Outside the core of Trump's zealot base, which celebrates the patriotic heroes of that day, sits a larger faction of more grudging GOP supporters for whom the Capitol insurrection is an unpleasant memory repressed as a matter of mental hygiene. See, again, they're mad, we're not mad. He's mad, we're not mad. These people wouldn't flat out deny that January 6th happened, but they've mentally sequestered its memory and significance, refusing to allow it to force them into any uncomfortable conclusions. They'd laugh you. Yes. They'd laugh you out of the room for suggesting, for instance, that what happened just 5 years ago could plausibly happen again. Sorry to cackle at you like that. I always feel a little hypocritical criticizing Hillary's cackle and Kamala's cackle because I have a cackle too. And I'm trying to develop a Kamala cackle so I can do a good impression. So my apologies for that. Anyway, I love this. What a perfect paragraph to describe Liberal Tears and Fears Day. This is it. They wouldn't flat out deny that it happened, but they seem to have mentally sequestered its memory. No, Andrew, they don't care. We don't care. It's not, nobody is mentally suppressing anything. It wasn't traumatizing for us. We weren't worried about the government falling. We were worried about the people that the government was hauling away. We were worried about that. But we weren't worried about, like, honest to goodness, have we ever talked about how anyone thought this was going to happen? What would happen if those people were really trying to create an insurrection? How do you overthrow the U.S. government? Like, what's the process? Step by step. You take the Capitol building and then what? You know, it's just they think that we're mentally suppressing a terrible memory. But actually what it's not a terrible memory for almost everyone. And Andrew and the rest of the Bulwark crew are like, they're like girlfriends who got dumped and they're just obsessing over their boyfriend and their ex, and they can't let it go. All right, moving on. 3 years from today, Donald Trump may well find himself in a familiar situation. Asked to leave the White House and preferring not to. The strong odds are, of course, that he won't be on the ballot himself. But if a Democrat wins the presidency in 2028, he'll have far more compelling reasons not to let the transfer of power go ahead smoothly than he ever did in 2020. Oh, okay. All right, there's another insurrection coming, everybody, apparently. Back then, it was mostly a matter of arrogance and pride. Right. It couldn't possibly be that he, the president, who has access to everything and all the information, it couldn't be that he, the president, actually knew that 2020 was being stolen right in front of his eyes. It couldn't be that he was looking at all the evidence. It's just his arrogance and pride. He simply couldn't accept that he'd lost to Joe Biden. Nobody could accept it. Because nobody on earth looks at that doddering old senile lunatic and thinks he got 80 million votes from his basement. Nobody thinks that. The response from the left is, oh, it's mail-in ballots. Well, voting was easier. A, that didn't translate to 2024, did it? B, yeah. It's the mail-in. I gotta calm down. Spit talking. This time, the personal stakes will be much higher. Wrapped in the powers of the presidency, he's acted as a law unto himself for too long. This is what they do, right? When you start acting according to the Constitution, they call that acting to the law as a law unto yourself. Like that, when you start paying attention and following the Constitution, that's when you become an insurrectionist to the left. Wrapped in the power, blah, blah, blah. He's acted as law unto himself for too long, not to dread going back into private life where long delayed legal consequences might be lurking, waiting for him. That's why we have to win 26 and 28, because they're signaling this, right? They're broadcasting it. That's what it's going to be. Gridlock. And worse. I actually think it's going to be worse. I think the bulwark people of the world think it's going to be endless legal lawsuits. I think it's going to be much worse than that. I actually think it's going to be prison time and maybe even executing people, not in the streets, just convicted people that they've convicted of, whatever, sedition, traitorism, the things we should be doing right now. Right? That's what we should be. We should have heads on pikes. We should be making an example of somebody. We haven't killed anybody in a capital case in a long time in this country. And it feels like this might be the moment to do that if there is a worthy offender. How might Trump's strategic thinking run in such a moment? Let's look at his current handling of the situation in Venezuela. Ooh. Trump has described Nicolas Maduro, I'm going to say it like a liberal, Nicolás Maduro's 2024 reelection as fraudulent, correctly for a change, and explicitly compared it to his own defeat in 2020. Now, having plucked Maduro from power, Trump has not hastened to install that election's rightful winner in his place. He struck a deal with the politician of his choosing, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, to serve as long as she continues to please him. And he has waved aside the idea that Venezuela should immediately hold new elections, as the country's law demands in such cases. We have to fix the country first, he said. You can't have an election. You have to nurse the country back to health. I do think, sidebar on this Venezuela thing, I do think Trump is right. And I do think everyone else is right to be skeptical. I think both of those things have to happen. I think everyone should stay skeptical of the situation because we don't want another endless war. And we don't want to be, I don't think we want to be imperialists. I've actually been thinking about the Venezuela thing for a few days now. And I don't know. I kind of said this on the New Year's Eve episode too, didn't I? About America's borders. Like, why do we think that they have to be this? Just what it is now, and that's just the way it is now. Everything's set, and that's the way it is forever. I don't know. There's a part of me that wonders if we have to give it back. Can we keep it? What would that look like? Could it be a territory? What would the international consequences be of that? I don't know. But if it really is America first, maybe we just keep it. But I do think that, yeah, everyone should be skeptical when, but I do think that, yes, as smarmy as this description is, this is exactly what Trump has done. He has installed the vice president as long as she's going to be compliant. And he is saying we can't have their election system is completely corrupt. They can't have an election tomorrow. They're just going to get another Maduro. But we also can't pretend that Venezuela doesn't have very close ties to the Dominion voting system. Well, what was it called before? What's the parent of Dominion? Very close, Smartmatic, very close ties. And there's some evidence that has come out even in just the January 6th committee meetings that Venezuela, I don't even know what. It's just the name comes up. So maybe Trump doesn't want to have elections because he needs to dig around a little bit. Maybe there's some other things coming down the pike here that have nothing to do with Nicolas Maduro other than he was in charge, and have everything to do with how the Democrats keep winning the unwinnable here. This is why I say we're at war. And this is why I think you have to take this very seriously, because their entire structure is crumbling right now. You understand? The entire Democrat structure is crumbling. And it's not just politicians who want cushy jobs. That's not who's running it. It's people who have their entire legacy, entire family fortunes, their entire countries wrapped up in what they're doing to us here in our country. So when you see the Gavin Newsoms out there, Gavin is creating an entire shadow government here in California right now. He's hired the fired CDC people. He's talking about reinstating COVID restrictions. He's imitating Trump in a lot of his executive orders, and of course his comms team is doing. They think they're doing the Trump thing. I wish it could be funnier. I just wish they could be funnier. They made a funny Benny Johnson joke today that tickled me, but other than that, I wish they could be funnier. But that's why you're seeing these people show up and attacking ICE, right? That's why they remember when they were keying the Teslas and blowing up Teslas. Wasn't that a quaint time? It's because they're at war, because we are about to disassemble their entire structure. They're fighting for their lives. This is why I'm saying you have to take it seriously. It's no longer about winning at the ballot box. That's part of it. But honestly, we've been invaded. We have enemies in this country. I think some really uncomfortable things are going to happen in the next 3 years. I do. Some things that we're going to say Americans should never do. But in war, just stay tuned for the Venezuela stuff. It's the tip of the spear. And it's going to get more violent as more comes to light right here at home. You should be armed, by the way, if you're not. Okay. An armed society is a polite society. Let's see. Who's to say Trump couldn't try to pull the same thing here? That after a hotly contested 2028 election between, say, J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom. Listen, lefties, I know you're excited about Gavin. I mean, you're just kind of any port in a storm. I get it. But Gavin's not going to make it out of the primaries. He's going to pull a Kamala. The second he has more than 3 minutes to talk, everyone's going to be like, no. And everybody else in the Democrat Party who wants to run would have to drop out, because the second that he gets any pushback from the other people on the stage, he's going to crumble. He doesn't have any arguments to make. He's not going to make it. In which he and his apparatus again spread elaborate rigged election conspiracies among their followers. Trump might announce that the new president will be temporarily, of course, neither. Trump himself would just have to stay on just until they can get to the bottom of the election fraud that obviously took place. Forget all the other stuff about Trump holding on to power. I think it's a very interesting premise, though. I think it's very interesting to think about if we have a close election in 28. And I don't think we're going to have a close election in 28. If we win in 26, which is very up in the air, if we win in 26, I think by the time we get to 28, the bulk of this work will have been done and the entire mood of the country is going to be changed. And the bulwarks of the world really will be in the minority. So I don't even believe we'll have a situation like that. But never say never. That's the lesson we've learned from the 2020s. He goes on, would such a move necessarily work? Of course not. But what it means to live in the January 6th era is to recognize that these scenarios are plausible. In fact, there's only two things that stand between us and that reality. The first is the extent of Trump's own presumption and hubris, against which it has been unwise to bet in recent years. I'm going to read that again. The first is the extent of which Trump's own presumption and hubris, against which it has been unwise to bet in recent years. So people are saying, don't bet against Trump's presumptions and hubris. No, again, they don't understand us. Again, this is why the persuading part is over. They don't understand us. And they definitely don't understand Trump. They got it half right. It's been unwise to take that bet in recent years, but the bet is betting against Trump's personality. It's not that he's so proud and hubristic. It's that he has the thing. Whatever it is, he has the thing. He's 11 billion to 1 when it comes to attacks on his reputation. So they got that half right. A lesson we learned in 2021, a lesson we keep learning over and over and over, is that these structures do not support themselves. The people entrusted with them have to choose to live up to their responsibilities, even when considerable pressure is on them not to. I think that is a great statement, Andrew. And if I thought that you were a right-thinking person, I'd put it on a t-shirt. A lesson we learned in 2021. a lesson we keep learning over and over again, is that these structures do not support themselves. No, that he's absolutely right. Government is not one or two people. Government is you. The people entrusted with them have to choose to live up to their responsibilities. Do not accept from any politician who says, well, it just can't be done. We just can't do it. Don't accept that anymore. We're done with that. Even when considerable pressure is on them not to. That's right. Stand strong when you know right is right. That's why I wrote that book. I wrote it in 2022 when we were going through the trans bathroom laws here in California. And I'm going to tell you something I'm working on to help people get pro bono representation in these civil rights cases, in the trans issues. But I wrote it because we were right in the heat of it. And I just thought, and a lot of moms were like, I don't want to be mean. And I just thought, no, enough. We've had enough. It's time to stand up, tell the truth, draw your line, here and no further. It doesn't matter if it's not popular and people are not going to like you for saying it. And I was running it for school board at the time and people didn't like me for saying it. And I wasn't popular and I'm still paying the price for that loss. I'm still paying the price for it in my own community. But it was the right thing to do. You stand up because you have legs to stand, not because it's right or not because people are going to love you for it or hate you for it. You stand up because it's right. If you have legs to do so, you must. So I think it's a great statement. It's just too bad that he doesn't understand the truth of it. On and before January 6, 2021, enough of them did. And then in the days, weeks, and months and years after Trump and company wore them all down into acquiescence and impotence, here's hoping the next batch will be as honorable. 3 years from now, we may find we beat them. And there's another article on here written by Bill Crystal, but I don't want to read it because I'm hungry. But it's Stephen Miller, anti-American. All right, let's stop the share. All right, where are we at? It's January 6th. And the bulwarks of the world are sad. They're not sad, though. They're mad. They're mad that you decided to have a mind of your own. And by the way, this is the whole point. It's not that what the words that these people write and the thoughts that they have are worthless. That's not it at all. Or were ever worthless. That's not it at all. They're intelligent people, and if they want to do what they do, they should do it. That's not the problem. It's not that they're worthless. It's that they're the arrogant. Andrew described Trump as full of hubris and arrogance. It's projection. That's why they're so mad at you. That's why they hate you for voting for Trump, for supporting Trump, or for even being a little nice to him. That's why they hate Trump. What they hate is that you decided to have some thoughts on your own and you didn't consult them about what you were supposed to be thinking or how you were supposed to be interpreting what was happening around you. They thought that they were the leaders of the conservative movement because they were entertaining conservatives. And it made them really mad to find out that they weren't. They're not our leaders. They're just our entertainers. None of us are leaders. I'm not your leader. I'm just an entertainer. I hope I give you some good information and inspiration. That's really what I would like to be. An inspiration rather than an entertainer. But I'm not, what I'm saying is I'm not a fool. Okay. I don't think that me sitting in this chair and turning on this camera a few times a week is the equivalent of, leading the Israelites out of Egypt. But we all do have a part to play, and we all do, have a little piece of this battle, and this little space is mine. But I guess back to my point, that's what's happened to the bulwarks, but that's really what happened to the liberals, period. And, I don't know if it's just me. You tell me if you notice. I feel like a lot of you have already noticed over the years, but it's increased my observation has increased of how condescending liberals are in the past 4 years or so. It's almost like they've dropped all the diplomacy. Because even in the Obama era, I never bought into the Obama is a diplomatic, such a good speaker. I never thought that. I never did. I always wondered why people couldn't see how fake he is. That being said, there are a lot of conservatives even who said, well, Obama, he's a good guy. And, He's a decent, he speaks well. He doesn't say much, but he speaks well. And even that's gone. He's friendly. You can go back and find on my YouTube page, you can find where I got to interview Obama from my house. Google came, it was a Google fireside chat. And Google came, wasn't just this, like a Zoom call. Google sent a team to my house. They sat in my house for a week, y'all, where they set up and tested connections, and they brought in all these computers so they could make sure they had the best internet, the best connections. Had these 3 sound guys. It was so fun, actually. They were fascinating to talk to. These guys don't have a home. One of the guys has international status. It means he can travel to all the countries because he does this very niche work for Google, which is this sound setup. He's like, I don't even have an apartment. I'm on the road almost every day of the year. It was so crazy. But anyway, memory lane. But I talked to Obama back then, and we had, I asked him some tough questions, actually. If you remember a clip of Obama saying, this is the most transparent administration in history, that's a response to me. That's a response to my question on this chat. So I did give him a few hard questions, but then we had a little bit of fun. I got to ask him a fun Valentine's Day question, which I repost every year for my husband. And yeah, he was fun. He was charming. It was, it was fine. Some people got upset that I guess I wasn't more angry towards him, but it was an interview. That being said, so I guess I can see that people saw some kind of charm there. The Bill Clintons of the world, he's certainly charming. Certainly. But over the past few years, I think that they have not been able to hold that facade up. Their masks are dropping because so are their bank accounts. You know why Hunter is out there pushing a book? These people are broke. How did the Obamas go from having $200,000 in their bank account to having a $30 million home on Martha's Vineyard? That is a investment that requires ongoing income. And I think the president's pension is $170,000 a year, something like that. It's not much. I mean, considering, you led the free world for 8 years, it's not much. Their entire, like, these people, I know you think they're rich because you're poor compared to them. I know you think they're rich, and so they just live like rich people. And if they're having financial problems, why don't they just sell off a few boats or sell a few cars and downsize? No, this class of wealth, of influence, they don't do that. They don't downsize. They don't, it's like asking you to give up your career so that you can, whatever, keep your house. They don't do that. They're not going to downsize. All this money, where do you think, again, I want to ask you how the Obamas have a $30 million mansion on Martha's Vineyard. How does Ilhan Omar have $77 million in her bank account when she came here as a poor immigrant from Somalia? Right? You know what I mean? Where's all the daycare money going? Where's all the autism money going? Where's all the elderly care money going? Where are all our tax dollars going? And if we looked hard enough and followed the trail all the way down, would it end in Martha's Vineyard? Or out on the ocean on a paddleboard? I don't know. I think 2026 is fixing to be a big year, and I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. And I'm not deluding myself in the least. I do not think that it will be without trials or tribulation. And I'm not the type of person who's going to tell especially not people on my side, who's going to tell people, don't be skeptical or I think it's just as dangerous to say, don't give Trump a hard time about anything. No, that's dangerous too. So if you feel so moved to do that, I think that's your place. I think that we need that. We need that. Not me. I'm not that person. Not me. I think I know where I'm at. I think I know where I'm at. Let me know if you know where you're at. You can follow me on X at kiradavis. Follow me on YouTube, justkiradavis, pretty much everywhere. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, JUST kiradavis. Write to me at kiradavisinfo.pm.me, or you don't have to just I get some emails nowadays, but most people just track me down through social media. So however you want to do it, or just drop it in the comments. I know what I wanted to tell you. I was telling you about that book I wrote, Drawing Lines, endorsed by Dan Bongino, a no-holds-barred battle plan for conservatives. And as I told you, I wrote it because I had had enough of this. Literally, this was the deciding moment when I said, I have had enough. And I wrote an article. You can probably find it still at Red State. It's called, It's Time to Draw Your Lines. was tired of the mom crowd telling me that they just didn't want to be mean. And a lot of these trans kids are struggling. And, they have a friend whose daughter is trans or son is trans and yada, yada, yada. And I was saying, no. We are now allowing men, grown men who are perverted enough to put on dresses and makeup. We're allowing those men to go into the bathrooms with our daughters alone. Someone has to stand up and tell the truth. Someone has to stand up and say something. So let me go get this code here while I'm thinking of it. So I joined this I found a thing. I found this cool campaign. And what they do is they help provide, please forgive all of this silence. They help provide pro bono care, pro bono representation for women and girls who have been abused by this trans cult madness. Like they've got a couple of cases they're working for. I think they're involved with this 2 Supreme Court cases. Okay, here it is. Enough. I'm going to put this link for this in my X bio, and it's already in my Instagram bio. I thought it's cool. Let me explain this to you. It's the coolest thing ever. Because one of the biggest problems I was having when I was running for school board is getting people to speak up. Just nobody wanted to be labeled as anything, and especially moms, because it's hard for women. We depend on our social circles. And so when we're damaged in those circles, it can have repercussions for our kids even. So it gets hard to be an outsider as a woman. That's why as a woman, this is why when you have too many women running government, it always becomes a collectivist nightmare because women are so social. So somebody had the brilliant idea of, instead of having a big, campaign where you tell people donate so you can help people fight the trans issue, they do a car line campaign, car line bumper sticker campaign. So moms, you go to that car line every day and you sit there for hours and hours every week. You put this on the back of your car, and if someone's just staring at it for long enough and curious, they'll scan the code and it'll take them to this website. And the website, again, I'll have all the information in my show notes, in my bios, all of that. You get one of these bumper stickers, put it on your car, someone scans it, it takes you to the website, Child and Parental Rights Campaign, and it will give you an option to donate and receive your own bumper sticker. And then that donation goes to the lawsuits. It goes to the defendants in these cases. And so your purchase of the bumper sticker it's what I say in Drawing Lines, it's each one reach one. So you're not shouting and inviting people to call you a Nazi. You just have a bumper sticker on your car in the car line. I think it's brilliant. It should be done for everything, to be honest with you. Like, my whole point is this: everyone has to get in the game. Everybody, you've got to do something right where you are. My code, because if you go through me, then I get, then they can track it and they can see that my account is sending I want people to see that I'm the badass. That's what I want. So it's a cprc.point.dog, but I'll have all the link information. I don't know how to put it while I'm doing this live because I'm 51. Someday when I do this show for real in a studio with a producer, it'll be different. But anyway, what I loved about it is I've said in my book that no one has the luxury of sitting by the sidelines anymore. You do not. You do not. We are at war. Everybody's got to pick their battlefield and get in it. And so the book, I give you ideas because not everybody can run or should run for school board or any office. Not everyone can, reach thousands or millions of people on a podcast or a show. Not everyone's going to go to their city council meetings every week, but there's something you can do somewhere. There's something you can do somewhere right where you are. So I loved the bumper sticker campaign. Again, go search for all those links and make sure you use mine so that they know that we're effective. But as far as the days when we could just sort of put it on autopilot, we're paying the price for that. So everybody's got to get in the game right where they are and figure out how to be a part of this. Maybe I got to end this. So maybe Thursday's episode, I will talk about deportations and investigations, because I really want us to drill down on what's going on right now across the country with the Nick Shirley investigations, what's happening in Minnesota. Now it's spreading. Washington, California, it's spreading. And there are a lot of people. I do want to say this before I go, because I've been in this business a long time now. I was in the beginning of this business right? Before there was a right-wing social media sphere, we called it the blogosphere then, before there was a right-wing blogosphere, right? When Andrew Breitbart revolutionized this genre. That's when I came in. So I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of people come and go in that time. And a lot of people have worked very hard in obscurity for a long time because we didn't have the social media game the way we do now. And of course, Elon buying X changed everything. We didn't have that. So a lot of people, I'm not going to name names, but a lot of people have been working and investigating and doing stuff over the years. And they have already uncovered the fraud in Minnesota and other places. And they have run reports, but they've sort of just disappeared into the ether. And a lot of those people are expressing frustration and maybe even a little bit of jealousy right now. And I want to say, I don't blame you. And I also want to say, just don't let it get to you, because the truth is, and I know exactly where you're at. I know exactly where you're at. But the truth is, this is how it had to go. You were a leader, not the star. You know, not every leader gets to be the star. And maybe that's still coming for some of you out there. You know, I'd like to believe that for you that have been out there doing the hard work. But sometimes some of us, our work is just to be a voice. And then when everything comes to fruition, then there's something for people to reach back to and to say, yeah, this has been going on longer than we thought. So it has a purpose. It has a function. I'm sorry that maybe you're not getting the accolades that Nick is getting right now. But one day Nick will be in your place. I've seen that too, right? One day Nick will be, I remember when I did this, and somebody else is going to come along and reimagine what he did. And they're going to get a lot of attention. So that's just how it goes. I remember seeing Dave Chappelle complain about Key and Peele, you know, that comedy duo, Ron. And I remember him complaining, saying, you know, I can't help but get a little bent out of, because when I was running Chappelle's show, this was the biggest battle I was having, doing long form sketches. Comedy Central didn't want to do it. They said people didn't do it this way. The Chappelle show that we got, that was revolutionary. And he had to fight every second of the way. That's why when they offered him the 50 million towards the end, he was like, I'm not doing this, because it wasn't worth his time and stress. But he couldn't do the recurring sketches or the long form sketches, not in the way he wanted to. But then came Key and Peele, and they did do it that way. They took what Dave did and they added to it, and they did get to do the things that Chappelle wanted to do on his show. We all think of Chappelle's show as the gold standard. Like, we don't see that. We're like, yeah, he nailed it. What's he talking about? But he sees what he wanted to do, and Key and Peele got to do it, and he was told no. And he was bitter about it. And he said that, I'm bitter about it. And I actually wrote a little op-ed on it. And I said, you shouldn't be bitter about it. I understand why, but you're a groundbreaker. You're a trailblazers. And you know what? Most of the trailblazers in the world do get forgotten. They do. Because blazing the trail might be exciting, but it also takes a lot of work. And that's a lot of energy. But then the next person that comes along gets to just run down the trail. And so they have extra time and energy to add, you know, to that original trail, add beautification. So it doesn't matter. I guess what I'm saying is, or try not to let it get to you. If you feel like someone else is stealing your thunder right now, you have a place, you had a very important place, and it's still very important. There's no Nick Shirley without you, right? Without all the work that you've done in previous years. All right, everybody, I'm going to go have some lunch. What do I got coming up this week? I don't think I have much. This show will be back on Thursday at noon. Still working. I have the Orange Report, which debuted in December, but we're going to get that up and running more regularly this year. That's Orange County based news and opinion show. I pulled down the second episode because I didn't like how it looked. So I pulled it down, and I'm going to redo it. But there's a really interesting interview that I did with the mayor of San Clemente, Steve Knobloch. I'm going to release that this week on its own. And he has been fighting the battle down in San Clemente. San Clemente is a small beach town in South Orange County here in California. And because Trump's been so effective on the border, a lot of these coyotes have moved to sea. And they're sending a lot of ponga boats. They're the little flat fishing boats onto the beaches of Orange County. So they go out. There's a big military base next to us here in Orange County. So they got to go around the base, and then they take a quick left and they come right into the shores of our small town beach towns, San Clemente being the most convenient. And they land on the public shores while people are sunning themselves with their families. And then they race to the streets with waiting vans. And the mayor actually ran for office to try to repair this problem. And then when Trump closed the border, it just drove more coyotes to do that. So even as border crossings are down in the California beach cities, they're up. No one's talking about it because the border has been such a success. And he couldn't get permission from his city council to let him take preventative measures. So the state of California and his own city council are working against him. He's one mayor in one small town. His name is Steve Knobloch in San Clemente. And he had this great idea to just turn the surf cameras. It's a surf town, and you have public surf cameras. They watch the shoreline to see what the surf is like that day. Let's turn them out a little further so that we can monitor the ocean, and then we'll just let the citizens report ponga boats they see coming in. No, city council didn't want that. The state didn't want that. They've been blocking this guy at every opportunity. And so he's had to take matters into his own hands, and he did. And he did. So that's when I talk about everybody's in this game now. Everyone's in this battle now. Everyone is. People are fighting this battle. You don't even know they exist. So I want to bring these stories to you. I think this is a national story, to be honest. Boats of migrants crashing the beaches in the middle of the day while children and families are playing and going into waiting vehicles. Where are they going? We talked about that. I talked about that with the mayor. The mayor's been in touch with the Trump administration, and the Trump administration is offering as much help as they can. So I'll explain that to you. But he's up against the state of California, and the state hates Orange County. They hate us. They do everything they can to make sure that we'll be destroyed. They want to bring us to heel. We're the last independent county in this state. So that's going to be coming out this week. You're going to want to hear that story, and I'll let you know how you can support the mayor and support the citizens of San Clemente and the citizens of California. The blue states, we're not in good times yet. I keep saying we're about 18 months behind the rest of the country. Like, we're still at $5 a gallon gas. We're still having border issues. We still have crime issues, immigration issues. All that's still going on. You guys are in the golden age, and we're still in the blue era. But I believe that 2026 is going to be a year of big change for us. Good change. I do. So pick your battlefield, and get in there. Definitely check out my bios to get the link for the Enough bumper sticker campaign. I made my kids put one on their car. My husband will not. He does not put bumper stickers on his car, but he's never in a car line anyway. This is really for the moms, to be honest. It's really like, if you're in a place where you're waiting for a long time, use your car as an advertisement. I did that when I was running for school board. Let's put magnets on my car. Okay. I think you guys have had enough of my lovely, melodic, not at all annoying voice. Yeah. Again, I don't think I have any other dates. I think January 20th, I might be filling in for Dr. Drew. That's fun, but more on that to come. All right. Peace.